I was lucky. Because when I was finance director, the economy was great. And if you're going to be the finance director for the state of California, choose a year when revenue's just pouring in. That's why I was fortunate. It was that rather than anything I did which accounted for the balanced budget, I tell you truthfully. But it was my job to advise the government, and particularly the governor, to exercise the line item veto. And I did a lot of advising. If I'm honored to be our state's next governor, I would continue to use that tool again and again and again. I veto each bill, each budget-busting bill, down to the level under the old Paul Gann initiative limits. And that used to be our state's constitutional law, that you couldn't spend any more one year than you did the previous, only the adjustment for inflation and population. When revenues fall, our expenditures would fall. We could create a reserve, we build it up. And eventually, my thought is, it would take a few years, but we could collect the taxes one year, let it earn interest, and not spend it till the next. Then everybody would know how much money we had to spend, and there wouldn't be any basis of being overly optimistic and not balancing the budget, because we were overly optimistic on how much revenue we have. The governor can actually do that. The governor can use the line item veto and bring us within our responsible limits. More than any other candidate running for governor, with the exception of Jerry Brown, who actually was governor, I can say that I know what it takes to pass a balanced budget because I was part of doing that. I was a member of the United States Congress. I was a member of the Joint Economic Committee when the federal budget was last balanced in the year 2000. I take sole responsibility for having achieved that. I was a member of the Budget Committee of the California State Senate when we balanced under Governor Pete Wilson. And I did it as Director of Finance for the state of California under the leadership of Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, we have to demand that our leaders be specific about paying for government programs and specific about the cuts they make to balance our budget. President Obama recently proposed a health care plan. It would cost, by his own admission, $900 billion over 10 years, but he says he'd find that money by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. That phrase, "I'll pay for government by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse," has also strangely come up in approaches to the state budget. We should never accept that phrase as a substitute for actual numbers. When the president proposes a $900 billion program, we have to demand to know what specifically are you going to cut in order to pay for it. And when one's running for governor, one should be required to identify exactly where the money needed to balance our current budget is going to come from. It's no more acceptable to say we'll just cut waste, fraud, and abuse in one case than in the other. It's no more acceptable to say, I'll tell you once I'm governor. Or, we'll run the state like a business, and that will find us the money. No, I need details. 4 months ago, on May 18th, I put up on my website, and you can find those details to this day, specific line items constituting $15.4 billion in cuts. A couple weeks later, the budget got worse and identified $2 billion more in specific cuts. That's $17.4 billion line by line identified to balance our budget. This week, one of my good friends, and they're both good friends running for governor, announced that this particular candidate, you'll notice I'm using the noun rather than the pronoun, would identify $15 billion in cuts after the election. After the election. 4 months after I put forward my specific cuts, 2 months after the legislature and the governor reached a budget agreement, and we still have no specifics about where this candidate's $15 billion in cuts would come from, except one, firing state employees. My other Republican colleague running for governor hasn't even agreed to that. The second candidate has not identified a single dollar of specific cuts, not one dime. I got that line from the candidate. I put out a specific, line-by-line cut to every aspect of state government, more than $17 billion in specific dollars not allow a candidate to go ahead and criticize another candidate's plan for balancing the budget unless they put forward their own plan. Saying we'll just eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse won't do. We need to demand no less from the president when he speaks about that on health care. We need to demand no less from our candidates for governor on the budget. Over the 32 years in my life since I left school, I've spent 17 in government. As a result, some have tried to call me a career politician. You could more accurately call me a career teacher. Because in addition to the time that I was teaching full-time, I taught class even when I was in Congress and in the state Senate. The teaching was at Stanford, at Campbell, go Bears, and now at Chapman University in Orange County. I know government, and I know Chapman. I know government, and I know education. 5 of those years in education was dean of the business school at Campbell, the House School of Business. And what we did, there's 1 or 2 MBAs in the room. What we did at the School of Business was get jobs for thousands of Californians. I was dean of both the undergraduate and the graduate program. Sure. We study business in our state and in the states that compete with us. We analyze how our students can be successful as entrepreneurs, as managers, accountants, CEOs, CFOs. I taught those students from my own experience so they would know how to negotiate the many barriers that government imposes on those who try to create jobs in our state and in our country. And during the summers, I taught economics in Africa. The reason, I was given a tremendous gift as a young man. I got a full tuition scholarship to get a PhD in economics from the University of Chicago, and Milton Friedman as my faculty advisor. I thought I should try to give something back from that gift, so I shared it. The continent away, a place where a free economy is not taken for granted. So I taught free market economics in Ghana, Eritrea, and Rwanda on 6 different occasions. I've studied business with intensity because that's the job of the dean of a great business school. I know the effect of job-killing regulations imposed by government. I've actually published research on the effect of too many lawsuits on killing jobs in any state. And, more importantly perhaps than any, I've had the experience of being part of the administration of Ronald Reagan. He shattered all the norms in Washington by actually insisting that government regulations pass a cost-benefit test before they would be imposed on the free enterprise system. And that's exactly what I do as governor. I'd appoint individuals to our state's boards and commissions who would not let a regulation out unless it passed a cost-benefit test to make sure that we weren't killing jobs and killing opportunity in our state. And to curb lawsuit abuse, I back a law that says if you bring a lawsuit against somebody else and you lose, you pay